Story 1. Perimenopause. I never heard anyone mention it in my life, and I only learned what it meant at age 40. I thought a menopausal woman was someone going through the change, and that phase would last for about a year around ages 50 to 55. I hadn't realized that perimenopause can begin at around age 40, bringing with it a wide range of rarely mentioned symptoms, and can last for up to 10 to 15 years or sometimes longer. Story 2. If you have large breasts, having the right bra or sports bra can make the difference between going about your day comfortably and getting scars from your skin being rubbed raw in a sensitive area. Story 3. The first day of your period can completely disrupt your life once a month. Additionally, doctors often dismiss your concerns and attribute them to other issues. Story 4. Everything is either too much or not enough. You're too loud, too quiet, too confident, too shy, too attractive, or too plain. I'm just trying to enjoy my snacks in peace. Story 5. When you discuss your experiences with sexual harassment, starting from a young age, people often dismiss you with comments like, "You should stop hanging around those people or move." This perspective assumes that getting catcalled is limited to a specific area, ignoring the reality that women around the world share this experience. They act as if women need to change their behavior, rather than recognizing that it's men who need to change. Story 6. How you could end up being a mother to both your child and your partner if you are not careful in whom you choose. Story 7. Men of all ages trying to approach me. When I first started being perceived as a woman around the age of 18 to 21, older men whom I had looked up to as uncles were suddenly trying to pursue me. I'm talking about men who were 20 or even 30 years older. It was really unsettling and a huge shock when I first realized it, especially since I had been quite sheltered. Story 8. No one warned me that being a woman meant constantly balancing strength with softness, as if expected to fight battles quietly while still smiling through them. Story 9. You can have the same education and title as a man, but be seen as a little girl at work until you turn 40. Then you are perceived negatively. Story 10. How internalized misogyny builds up throughout childhood and into adult life. Many layers of it reveal themselves when you begin to examine it more closely. Story 11. You can get something called a Bartholin cyst on your vulva, and if it becomes infected, you have to have it drained. Getting a needle in a very sensitive and sore area, being cut open with a scalpel, and enduring the pain as everything is squeezed out is quite an experience. Don't you just love being a woman? Story 12. Pregnancy is often glorified as a joyful experience, but the reality can be quite different. It can be challenging and at times overwhelming. I feel misled about what to expect. Story 13. Doctors, both male and female, may dismiss valid concerns and jeopardize your health rather than admit they were wrong. I have a genetic condition and was told I was mentally ill for feeling unwell for 25 years. By the time I was diagnosed at 47, significant damage had been done to my body, and I had to give up work shortly afterward. Every woman I know has a story about being disbelieved by doctors. Story 14. The shame I received from other women and so-called friends and family when my husband and I decided to have a planned cesarean section instead of a traditional vaginal birth. Story 15. The random escape plan I create in every place I visit. I identify escape routes and hiding spots in case something unexpected occurs and I need to stay hidden. This applies both indoors and outdoors. Story 16. You'll be objectified and sexualized frequently. Started when I was 13, and at 29 it hasn't stopped. Constantly being viewed in a sexual manner, and knowing that your body and appearance are always on other people's minds, is incredibly disconcerting. When you're young, it's especially strange because the attention usually comes from adult men who are much older. As an adult woman, it still appears in subtle ways in almost every interaction I have with men around me, certainly not as blatantly as it used to when I was younger. This ranges from a chat with a driving instructor to employers, airport customs agents, and hobby group friends, where a seemingly innocuous remark or a fun bit of chat is added for laughs, and often, as a woman, you're expected to play along. More often than not, the men making these comments are decent people and generally quite respectful of boundaries. It is just a sobering reminder that you are being perceived in a sexualized way by people you wouldn't expect to see you that way. Story 17. Iron deficiency. It is quite common in menstruating women but is often not regularly tested for. Many women go undiagnosed. I spent 10 years believing I had subclinical thyroid issues because the symptoms overlap significantly, and low ferritin levels can actually contribute to subclinical thyroid problems. Moral of the story: if you are fatigued and menstruating, or pregnant or postpartum, request a ferritin test. Story 18. Some men may have little respect for you but will marry you nonetheless because you serve a purpose for them. I believed marriage was a partnership where two people support and encourage each other's growth. It was painful to realize that some men would enter into marriage while being opposed to the idea of collaboration and mutual growth. They may intentionally hurt, sabotage, and break you to prevent you from leaving, all to maintain their status and power over you. Story 19. How much sexual activity puts you at risk for urinary tract infections? Or just how easy is it to get urinary tract infections? Wash thoroughly before and after. Take D-Manos, urinate after, and stay hydrated. Ensure your partner cleans themselves thoroughly beforehand. Avoid any rear-to-front contact during sexual activity. Story 20. This strange male mindset of entitlement to our bodies and actions is perplexing. How could anyone think another human belongs to them? That another person needs to please them? Or that dressing a certain way gives someone the right to touch them? Story 21. Genuinely, how many men and women do not see you as a full human being? You are only the role you can play in others' lives. It is not typical self-centeredness, as most people do not engage in this level of dehumanization with men. Men gain respect as they age, while women lose it more and more. When you are young, you are there to be pretty. When you are older, you are expected to be a mother. Even if you fulfill this role properly, you may still be insulted and called used up. I am honestly terrified to age, not because of losing my value or because I am scared of a few wrinkles and gray hair, but because what little pretended respect you receive is completely gone. You are not young and attractive anymore, and that is supposed to mean you have no value. I am only 22. And the number of people who have told me that I am not young anymore and to get married and have children as soon as possible because my time is almost up is insane. What is frustrating is that even if you know better and do not buy into that nonsense, it still hurts. Story 22. How often are we encouraged to give someone a chance when we aren't attracted to them? If a man isn't attracted to a woman, nobody ever expects him to give her a chance. Story 23. How much does birth control affect you? It is often recommended, prescribed, and distributed like candy, treated as the standard and an expectation. However, it should not be. More women need to be aware of this. Story 24. When I was slim, I was often catcalled and flirted with, and men frequently offered unsolicited help. Now that I am overweight, I am mostly ignored except for individuals, typically men, who feel the need to tell me how unattractive I am. Ladies, please remember that you do not exist for any man. You exist for yourself, so prioritize your well-being. They will never be satisfied, no matter what we do. Story 25. Even in a partnership, the lion's share of the responsibility will fall on you. You'll work full-time, manage most of the child rearing and childcare, handle cleaning and organizing, and run the household, all while looking like you just stepped out of a fashion magazine. Story 26. The emotional labor that goes into having a family is significant. I often think of myself as the manager of emotions because it feels like I carry the weight of everyone in the house. Story 27. Being a strong, independent, and intelligent woman does not make you difficult or intimidating. Story 28. Now that I am out of college, the only thing my parents care about is me having children. It is no longer about me as an individual. I feel sad. Story 29. Postpartum is the most difficult period of my life. Postpartum depression can begin hours or days after delivery. Story 30. The constant fear. You cannot smile at a stranger on the street because that stranger might become obsessed with you and start following you home. You cannot let your guard down too much because the moment you do, that could jeopardize your life. From around age 5 to 7, you are sexualized by older men, and at least one person in your life will make you aware of that fact while you are just trying to make sense of being a child. Nobody prepares you for the constant fear you endure just by being a woman. Story 31. You can be anything in this universe, but to many people, you may always be viewed in a specific way. At some point, individuals around you may fantasize about engaging in intimate activities with you. You will need to be cautious as long as you are perceived in this manner. Story 32. Unexpected and never-ending harassment occurs in various places, such as while I am walking outside, at work, in the elevator with other men, or at bars. This behavior significantly impacts my mood and can affect me negatively for the rest of the day. Story 33. How annoying is it to hear that I should smile more or that I don't look happy? Just leave me alone, seriously. Story 34. I struggle to be as close to guys as friends because they often can't maintain that closeness without wanting to be physical or developing feelings. Story 35. Perimenopause is a concept I am still learning about, as I am more familiar with menopause. Mothering a teenage boy can be quite challenging. Story 36. Doctors often say, "Of course it hurts. Periods are supposed to hurt," for years until they become frustrated and refer you to a gynecologist who may say, "Oh, it seems you have severe endometriosis." That would explain the excruciating pain and the significant blood loss that causes you to faint every month. Story 37. Not as serious as what other women have mentioned, but I am dealing with long chin hairs. Why am I growing a black beard in my 50s? Daily plucking has become a painful yet normal part of my morning routine. Story 38. It becomes increasingly difficult to lose weight after a certain point. I used to fluctuate in weight frequently, but now it seems to resist any efforts I make. Story 39. That you will be sexually assaulted. I might get downvoted for that, but honestly, it's so rare for me to talk to another woman who hasn't experienced such an event. It's sad. Mine was by someone I thought was a friend. Story 40. All the things that can make me unwell revolve around my reproductive organs. I do not have children and have never been pregnant. If it is not my ovaries, it is my endometrium. I also believe it was not discussed much with me while growing up. Story 41. The contempt from society at large is palpable. No matter what you do as a woman, you are often made to feel wrong. There is plain unequal treatment that is widely accepted. The desire of men who, at the same time, may hate you and disregard your well-being and safety is troubling. Story 42. Women should be able to gather online with others to discuss our struggles without someone interrupting to say, "Well, actually, men have it worse, and here's why. Nobody asked for your input. If you have something to say, make your own post." This comment was inspired by men in this very discussion. Story 43. You're going to lose so much hair and wake up only to find you still have more to lose the next day. Seriously, if a man lost as much hair as I have, he would be bald by the end of the week. Meanwhile, my hair is still growing at a rate of 6 inches a month. Story 44. Being seen as a woman instead of a child, even when I was still a minor because grown men found me attractive. Story 45. How exhausting hypervigilance is. Where am I? How am I dressed? Who is behind me? Be careful not to turn down a dead end. Always watch your drink. It is exhausting and takes the enjoyment out of most activities. Story 46. People who normally wouldn't care are suddenly obsessed with my safety when it comes to minorities. For example, the person who mocks rape victims is now ranting about men from the Middle East being rapists, as if he has ever truly considered the severity of rape. The anti-feminist is shouting about women's rights when they learn that I support transgender women. Story 47. Hot flushes, being told not to stress. When a woman has children, it's her having the children. When a man or dad does, everyone claps and tells him how wonderful he is. Hello? Well done for helping out with the kids. I dislike being the one who chooses what's for dinner. When I ask household members what they want, the response is often, "I don't mind. I feel judged on my weight, judged on my clothes, and judged for whether I work or not." Feels like there's no winning. Apologies for straying from the original topic. Story 48. How lightly they take women's periods and the pain. I used to have severe pain during my periods and would cry my eyes out. Once, I took a painkiller on an empty stomach, which was a bad decision. My blood pressure dropped, and my family took me to the hospital. The female doctor had the audacity to tell me this is normal with periods until you get married, but she wouldn't give me a painkiller. After my mother and brother asked her to do something about it, I was given an injection. Later, I consulted a good gynecologist, and it turned out I had a uterine infection. So there you go. Story 49. The levels of sexual harassment. I am under no illusion. I am not conventionally attractive. I have only ever had one partner in my life, and I am 42. But even I have been groped, touched, and harassed. No one teaches us that even women like me are often viewed as objects by these men. Story 50. The cruel attitudes of victim blaming, dismissiveness, and even punishment of domestic violence victims by the church, societal institutions, including healthcare, and by society at large are concerning. It is important to understand what a predatory aggressor is and how dangerous, devious, and obsessive they can be. There are brutal and misogynistic attitudes towards women by certain healthcare providers, who may dismiss genuine pain and health problems as merely an antidepressant deficiency. Women can sometimes be unkind to one another. I have multiple experiences that have been painful, but I prefer not to go into detail as I do not want to dwell on the sadness. Story 51. Woman, 30 years old. No one prepared me for the fact that, as a woman, I would constantly hear comments about my weight. Too fat. So I lost weight and was always on a diet. Lost weight. That was wrong too, because then I was too skinny. I heard comments like, "No one will want someone that skinny." It led to an eating disorder. I've been through therapy and I'm doing great now, but it was the worst experience that affected my mind. Story 52. I wasn't prepared to be catcalled and propositioned for sex starting at age 12. I had been raised to be afraid of scary men in dark alleys or parking lots, like most girls in the early 2000s. I had no idea what to do when the cashier at the gas station by my middle school asked if I was done developing or if I hadn't reached puberty yet. I was also unsure how to respond when the substitute teacher for the day asked if I would let him into the girls' locker room with me. If you have young children in your life, do not lie to them about stranger danger. Ensure they understand what some teachers, authority figures, and even family members can be capable of. Story 53. Nobody wants to hang out with or check in on you when you're pregnant or postpartum, at least in my experience. I was in labor with my little one for 72 hours. Yet my husband received many more congratulations after the baby was born. Story 54. The moment when bonus uncles start to see you as fair game because you're not technically related. I had this happen twice. Once after turning 21, when my favorite lifelong bonus uncle came to celebrate a family achievement. It completely shattered my perception of the man I had known since I was 8. The last time was at a family holiday. An uncle by marriage told a very pregnant me, "I have a horse you can ride." That man was unsettling after I turned 18. Also, no one prepared me for having to guard my teenage daughter in places like Walmart. Men will literally follow her. I don't remember it being as bad when I was young, but there is no rage like a protective mother's rage. Story 55. You will never find a fairly priced, attractive bra if you are anything above an E cup. I am an H cup, and it's either spending a lot of money on something beautiful or opting for skin-colored bras, which usually still cost a lot. Story 56. When your menstrual cramps are so strong that they radiate to your lower back, it is overwhelming. The pain is indescribable and unimaginable. Story 57. You may find yourself navigating perimenopause when your body undergoes significant changes, and it can feel like there are no solutions available. This is incredibly frustrating. If perimenopause or menopause affected men, there would likely be more answers and effective remedies. Story 58. Competition from other women undermines success by connecting it to relationships with men in positions of power. For example, when a woman gets a job or a promotion, there may be suggestions that she has an inappropriate relationship with her boss. Additionally, women often face negative labeling for behaviors that others do not like. Story 59. Sometimes your biggest enemy can be another woman. They may feel insecure, spread rumors, and make belittling comments simply because you are successful and attractive. I wish they realized that, deep down, Women feel more comfortable and happy when they support one another. It means a lot to us. Story 60. If you're not skinny, you are always considered too fat. If you are skinny, then you are told to gain weight. Story 61. If you are a disabled woman, no one cares, and it is often seen as your fault for not complying, especially in abusive situations. You feel overlooked and undervalued. Story 62. I was surprised to learn how deep misogyny runs. I truly thought things were getting better, but the sheer vitriol directed at Hillary Clinton in 2016 shocked me. Men can say all the right things, but until the situation becomes critical, you won't really know if they have your back. Story 63. Nobody listens to your expertise. Nobody believes you could ever be right about anything. There have been times when I knew more about a subject than others, and I had to wait, sometimes for days or weeks, for everyone to realize I was right. It's exhausting. Story 64. The actions of the men in my life are still my fault socially, even though they are adults. If your husband hits you, what did you do to deserve it? If a man assaults you, what were you wearing? Did you lead them on? If your husband cheats on you, why didn't you keep him satisfied? It's your fault. You are a young person, and a grown adult man is catcalling you? Why do you look so much older than you are? If your husband is a poor father, well, that's your fault. You should have magically known that. Men who engage in any of these actions, they are not men. They are boys. It's never a man's fault, and if it is, it's only because there isn't a woman next to him. Story 65. Some people are trying to tell me that biology has nothing to do with this issue, when by definition, it is the sole factor that contributes to our oppression. Story 66. Perimenopause. I grew up with an older sister, mother, and grandmother, and none of them ever spoke about it. They likely had no idea what was happening to them once they reached that age. Story 67. How would you feel if you realized that you don't want kids and everyone suddenly felt entitled to guilt trip you? They might suggest that because you have ovaries, you absolutely have to use them to have children, even if you don't want to. Story 68. Just walking down the street, I have to navigate around the number of men, or risk being literally plowed into. I try not to step aside for men in public anymore and often get shoulder-checked by individuals who then seem baffled and annoyed that I didn't move for them. It's exhausting. Story 69. Endometriosis. Apparently, 10% of us develop it, and I have a pretty severe case according to my gynecologist. It affects so much of my life now, and there's no way to really get rid of it. I just have to live with it. Story 70. Being watched and objectified by men in public never stops, regardless of what you wear or where you go. Even my own father has sexually assaulted me multiple times, not to mention the men in public. Being a woman feels like a curse. Story 71. The fear of not being taken seriously when buying a home, for example. If my husband is asking questions, he is just being thorough. If I ask questions, I feel like I am a clueless woman. Story 72. How much responsibility is placed on women for the choices and behaviors of others, including men and children? When things go wrong, it is often seen as her fault, even if she was the one who was harmed. Feels like being born a scapegoat. Story 73. As a child, I believed that the discrimination and oppression of women were things of the past. I wish what my younger self thought were true in the real world. Story 74. Periods can be very painful. My first period started when I was 9 years old, and I am now 34. I have a cyst on my left ovary, which has caused my periods to last for 21 days. I dislike this experience. Story 75. Even in a heavily female-dominated field where males face active discrimination upon entry, such as in nursing, men still on average earn higher salaries and are more likely to be promoted than women. Story 76. That early perimenopause would destroy what was left of my life. I used to enjoy being a woman. Now I wish to be a man. Story 77. When you're around 12 to 17, you may receive attention from adult men who are fully aware that you are a minor but do not care. However, when you reach your early 20s and complete your physical development, those predatory individuals tend to disappear, waiting for the next young girl to target. You are not mature for your age. They are attracted to your still somewhat childish appearance. Story 78. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder landed me in a psychiatric ward after nearly 10 years of wishing I was dead for a week every month. I always looked forward to the first day of my period because the moment I start bleeding, the hormonal shift brings immediate relief. It's a terrible feeling knowing that it's an unstoppable biological cycle. Story 79. How we are conditioned to compete with each other for everything, especially male attention, is pervasive. It is only when we recognize this that we can assert, I am not doing this anymore. You may find yourself in a unique situation where you have built beautiful friendships with like-minded women, yet you still interact with others who might undermine you at every opportunity. Story 80. Learning that many men don't want to be friends. They're just hoping you'll sleep with them. I used to be the tomboy who was one of the boys, but now I'm afraid to even talk to a man without thinking they just want to sleep with me. Story 81. Estrogen receptors are present throughout our bodies. We need this hormone not only for reproduction but also for overall well-being and proper functioning. Story 82. Birth plans are going out the window. I am being induced today. People can warn you, but it's rather scary. Feels like you have to jump off a cliff and hope for the best. Everyone tries to keep it positive, but when you struggle with anxiety, it feels like a constant mental game. You know more people successfully jump off the cliff than those who do not. But it's not something you understand until you are on the other side. Fear makes you want to run away, but there is nowhere to run. You have slowly climbed the cliff over 9 months. There is no evacuation. You just pick a direction and leap. Everyone you love is left as a spectator. They all believe in you and are excited for what comes next. But all you can think about is how scary the fall seems. Once you leap, there isn't really any turning back. Perhaps you will get lucky and appreciate the free fall or the refreshing water. Perhaps you will panic and need a rescue in the water. Who knows? Not you. Story 83. One thing about being a woman that no one prepared me for is how deeply people believe in gender equality in theory, but not in practice, and how much cognitive dissonance they carry to protect that illusion. I grew up being told that women can do anything men can, but when I actually try to exist in male-dominated spaces, I am often met with subtle or not-so-subtle pushback. People say we are equal, but what they mean is separate but equal. Women can have their own things, but they are not welcome in the places that really matter. I remember seeing a post where a father took his 13-year-old son and nephew on a boys-only fishing trip and left his 11-year-old daughter behind. Even though she normally went on these trips, the internet rushed to defend it. Boys need time away from girls, and they should be able to say things they can't say around girls. But imagine if he had one white child and one black child and said, "This trip is just for white kids. We need space to say things we can't say around black kids." Everyone would recognize how wrong that is. For another example of this, look at women's professional basketball versus men's professional basketball. Everyone shrugs and says, well, the men's league makes more money, as if that explains or justifies the massive funding gap. But imagine if we had racially segregated sports leagues, where the one for white athletes had all the sponsorships, media attention, and top-tier facilities, while the one for black athletes was expected to prove itself with a fraction of the resources. People would immediately see the injustice in that. But when it is about gender, the inequality is treated as natural or even deserved. That is the dissonance. People claim to believe in fairness but accept systems that are built to keep one group elevated and the other struggling to catch up. And when you point it out, they do not want to talk about the system. They want to silence you because you are threatening the comforting illusion that everything is already fair. Story 84. Accommodating others' needs is not a reciprocal relationship. Anyone you accommodate may take advantage of your kindness and may not even recognize what you have done for them. This dynamic can be detrimental to you on many levels. Story 85. Noticing how we are constantly objectified on television, in the media, on social media, and in video games. Men often view us only for our bodies, and this perspective is pervasive. It feels like being observed and exposed simply for being a woman. This is utterly disturbing. Once you start noticing it, you cannot ignore it. Women are frequently poorly represented and have little impact in the majority of series, movies, and television shows. The world is created by and for men, and it is painful. Story 86. How little we know about our bodies because science hasn't studied us properly. I am deeply convinced that I am doing something wrong, but trying to follow the suggestions of doctors and experts, which have been minimal to be honest, has either harmed me or made little difference. I believe there is something about my body as a woman that is not in tune with the functioning required for my existence, but I will probably never know. I just hope I don't get sicker. Story 87. How much of the world would see me as less than someone's property, not as bright, and not as deserving? Story 88. How little people actually care about the mother's health after birth. Baby, come get weighed and checked every week. Mom, sure, you've been bleeding for 6 weeks, had over 50 stitches, and are in hormonal chaos. Come see us in 8 weeks. Story 89. The absolute solidarity of women in the bathroom is incredible. You might be feeling down about life, and they would say, "Oh my gosh, no. You are so beautiful. I love you." And they are not worth it. That, along with the playful whimsy we all share, makes it even better. It's genuinely one of my favorite things when a group of women can be silly and whimsical together. Story 90. It's difficult to create friendships with men because they either seek romantic involvement or develop feelings. Why is it so challenging for many of them to have platonic relationships with women? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.